As always, I'm going to just start with a little prayer of gratitude, and then we'll dive into tonight's live webinar healing session. Thank you to the source of creation, the mother of the universe, for being the very life of this live webinar, for being everything. Thank you with all our hearts. Thank you to all the infinite diversity of expressions, manifest expressions of that single underlying totality of creation. For the expressions being so amazing, and for those which have the capabilities to allow us to fulfill the intentions of this live webinar. Everybody has their own intentions. This is when you can put your intention in. You are so sweet. You are so precious. Your intentions are really precious. They're really important. Thank you to all the ancestors, all of your ancestors, for their participation, their willingness, their love and support, for their being. Thank you to the divine in all of us for blessing tonight's webinar with the ability to dig in and bring out the best for everyone, bring out the best for all of us, for our individual intentions and for collective intentions, for supporting this time that we have to work together as a collective in a very powerful way to produce the very highest and best possible effects for ourselves and for the collective. Tonight's webinar is called The Profound Meaning of Everyday Experience. And the idea behind this webinar was to really look in depth and detail at the way, the mechanics by which every moment of life is enhanced, enriched through energy work, obviously. I was thinking of naming it How to Focus Your Attention to Create Magic in Every Moment. Because the idea here is that we have the potential to do that. And I was thinking we kind of divide it up into two parts. One part orients towards the mechanics of how our attention actually works to enrich each moment of life, and how totality or wholeness is actually how it integrates into the moments of life. The other point that I wanted to bring out tonight was, for those of you that are already experiencing totality in every moment or every particle of creation, how do we take that experience and extend it on to create maximum value for everybody, everywhere, and everything? What are the mechanics of the expansion, in other words, of that experience? So first the creation of the experience, and then the expansion of the experience. So there are two things that I'm looking at, maybe three things that we're looking at as we're going along here. The first one is, wait a minute, there we go. Okay, the first one is focusing attention, because that's really basic to energy healing. And I thought we could actually start out with a little exercise. So I'm going to encourage everyone, if it's comfy, to please do this within the context of your comfort always. But we're going to start with eyes closed. And we're going to do something that I did for years and years before I started doing energy work. And that was not this part that I had trouble sleeping, because I did have trouble sleeping during the time I was raising my little children and all that. But when I couldn't sleep, I spent an awful lot of time scanning my physiology with my attention. Just going in and looking at what was going on. So we're going to do that just for a moment. We're going to close the eyes. And of course, obviously, when the eyes close, awareness settles down. And let your attention gently be in the physiology. And notice how the attention is naturally attracted to any areas in the physiology that need a little extra love or a little extra support. Whatever area of the body requires some healing or some support. Also, notice how as soon as awareness settles down into the area that needs support, it also, as it's sort of isolating down into a point, it also expands to fill the whole body. So two things are happening. The awareness focuses on the area that needs love, but at the same time, it's drawing wholeness from the totality of the physiology. Our wonderful, intelligent bodies are so fabulously, they're fabulous expressions of totality, even though they're only the antenna of the whole big old universe, which is what you are. Still, the physiology itself is a little completion. It's a little wholeness. So the body, the attention, draws upon the completion or wholeness of the whole body and brings it, and then at the same time focuses it to that point in the physiology that needs the loving support. All right, let's open our eyes. That didn't go at all the way I was expecting it to, but it obviously went the way it was supposed to go for you, which is what I love about the webinars. Thank you. You guys are so awesome. You are so the best. You are so the best. So actually, we're going to do a little more with that exercise in a little bit, because that was the intention, was to go in some other different directions with it. But we want to take what we've got right now because it's serving everyone so nicely and expand upon that. So when awareness focuses into some area of the being that needs the loving support, that focus brings in wholeness, it enlivens bliss, it enlivens purity, it enlivens like nourishing and purifying and sustaining, integrating energies. And so it's basically automatically going in and starting to do healing and clearing for that area. However, we can enhance that effect. You can enhance that effect. And that's one of the things I wanted to bring up today, because for those of you who are in Fairfield, you're probably familiar with this, but for those who aren't, just letting everybody know that Fairfield's kind of almost like a spawning ground for energy healers and for various kinds of skill sets that arise in people's subtle skill sets, spiritual skill sets, etc. And so all the work that we've been doing with it for over the past webinars for development of the heart and integration and so forth has started to activate and enliven some really beautiful, really powerful, really good coordinations with everybody. So a dear friend of mine, I do not take credit for this, but a dear friend of mine discovered, and it works so beautifully, I'm sharing it with you, that when attention focuses into a particular part of the physiology, we can support and enhance that effect with a layering of totality, completeness, or wholeness. So I can't remember if I talked about this last time or not, but I just would like to illustrate that with a kind of a metaphor. And the metaphor is that wholeness has a 3-in-1 structure. And this is something that comes out of Vedic literature. It has this 3-in-1 structure of knower, known, and process of knowing. And in the field of these three are one thing, and they're like constantly curling in on themselves like that. And this curling in quality is a kind of a law of nature of the very, very finest, most delicate level of creation. So you can take this 3-in-1 structure of knower, known, and process of knowing, which are really one thing, and they can become one of those. They can become, for example, and the beautiful example that was given to me the other day was we can use an example from literature. You can use subject, an object, and a verb. So you can say, Dorothy speaks words. So Dorothy speaks words. There's an object, there's an action, and then words are the object. So think of them as those three: knower, process of knowing, and known. But Dorothy speaks words can become the known, and we can say, you watch Dorothy speaking words. All of a sudden, we have a secondary layer. The one has now gone over here, and now we have another layer of completeness or totality of knower, known, and process of knowing, or this 3-in-1. And that principle can extend and expand basically to infinity. You know, the camera videotapes you watching Dorothy speaking words. And, and it can go on like that. So that folding of infinity, that folding of the 3-in-1 value in on itself, again, 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 creates layers which, as they thicken, they add meaning, value, magic, fullness to every little experience, human experience. So essentially, this very, very simple principle is the principle behind the idea of adding a profound meaning or value to everyday experience, is that layers of totality or wholeness thicken each experience. So the first step to structuring that experience, or structuring that ability to have that experience on a consistent basis, is becoming familiar with the focus of attention. Because attention is that totality in and of itself. Attention is pure awareness, pure consciousness, pure being. So wherever it goes, it, by its own nature, is bringing wholeness or totality. What I was going to say is, we can add another layer of totality. There are all these different kinds of, you could say, symbols or forms in which totality expresses itself. Okay, so we have totality, the wholeness of creation, and it's like it stands within and outside of everything. It stands within and outside of everything. But we are functioning from our physical bodies in this area of creation. I've talked about Earth being a middle world, right? And everything, we're within the context of the isolations and boundaries of our being. That in this area, what we're really mostly dealing with are the signs, the indications, the forms of totality, So body is a form of totality. But when we're focusing attention, we can enhance the power of that focus with other forms of totality, because there are all kinds of simple forms as well. So I'm referring at this moment to sacred geometry, as I mentioned before. This was suggested to me by a friend, and we've been working with it now for months. And it's so beautiful, and I wanted to give it to all of you, because as we're working on healing different parts of the physiology, I want you to know this and to see it. So I'm looking, yes. So I have a button on my control panel here that lets me share my screen. So I'm going to share with you. Share screen. I'm going to share my desktop with you. Hello. There's my desktop. Okay. So I believe you can all see this picture now. This is a Flower of Life matrix. And this Flower of Life matrix is based upon sacred geometry. So that means that the proportions and the relationships between these shapes are expressions of totality, completeness, or wholeness. So this one, you can tell just by looking at it, something very satisfying about this image. I have another one. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, look at that one. Isn't that cool? Now this one shows how that same pattern that we looked at before that was very simple. Okay, there's the simple one. Sorry, the others are too small. But this is the simple one. But this form exists in creation. I first learned about it, probably a year ago from famous physicist. I'm trying to remember his name, but it's not coming to me at the moment. But he had just finished the mathematics of being able to measure protons. And this was like this huge thing that he did, like no mathematician or physicist had done this before. And what he discovered is that protons fit together in a shape just like this. They fit. And the thing about it is that this form is a universal form, and that's why we can look at it this way, and you can see that there are big, big forms of it and small, small forms of it all inside each other. And that's the way, this one's a little closer to what this really, really looks like in reality. So I wanted you to see it because it's way cool. So what you can do is, there's a feeling of perfection, of completeness, of wholeness, of satisfaction in this form. And what we can do is you can place that form, the center of it being the apex or the point through which your attention flows. So if, for example, we close our eyes, and we can do our exercise again. You can close the eyes and take a little scan of the body. And scan the areas, particularly where your attention spontaneously, innocently goes to those areas. These are the areas that are in greatest need of support. And what you can do is you can put this shape that I just showed you, it's called the Flower of Life Matrix, right over the spot where the awareness enters that part of the being. So the awareness flows through the Flower of Life Matrix. And what you'll notice is that as awareness flows through the Flower of Life Matrix, it magnifies, enhances, and integrates awareness. It's like adding another layer of totality. Another layer of totality. Oh, I see some of you are placing it over your whole bodies. That's awesome. Good job, right? Because our awareness is through the whole body. So we have a big one with a little ones inside for all the organs. Oh, you guys are so smart. See, I'm glad that you... Very beautiful, innovative group. Thank you. You guys are awesome. And what I'm doing, you're the ones who thought of it, but I got to speak it. But as soon as you did it, I started doing it too. And what I'm feeling is a kind of a flooding of this lovely, warm, kind of tingly feeling through the whole body. So beautiful. So beautiful. And it just happens instantly. It's just like you just think to do it, and being just does it. Why? Because being naturally, spontaneously likes to do that which is of least effort. It goes through least effort. And this Flower of Life Matrix, by its nature, is so present anyway in every particle of creation that it just almost happens spontaneously anyway. All right, my dears. I can send you these pictures, but I got them just from Googling Flower of Life Matrix. That's how I found them. So you can do that too, and there's all kinds of beautiful ones. Oh, look, there's a chat question. Oh, thank you. Drunvelo Melchizedek also talked about this. Yes, thank you. He did. And he's got a really nice video out where he talks about not just the Flower of Life Matrix, but many, many, many different forms of sacred geometry, because in the center of each of those circles, you can start drawing lines to the centers, and you get into all kinds of beautiful matrices and grids and fabulous, fabulous stuff. Yeah, thank you. The physicist, though, was somebody else. He was this guy with this lovely kind of Middle Eastern or Greek name, something like that. I'll think of it in a few minutes. But anyway, thank you for the suggestion. All right. Um, Going back in on the self, another thing is for anybody out there who does Reiki or any kind of energy healing with your hands, I've uploaded videos on how to use your hand chakras. You can put that flower of life matrix on the palm of the hand and then send the energy through the hand, and you get a whole nother level of fullness and completeness and totality, a whole nother level of alignment. It aligns the energy even more precisely and more concisely with the area of the physiology that needs that support. It helps to bring it down. Like, it's definitely refining. Nasim Haramin, yes, that's correct. That was the guy. Thank you, brilliant ones. Everybody's, you guys. I should be promoting everybody to panelists. Then we can just all talk with each other. It'd be so much fun. But anyway, I guess we're doing it in this form. But on that note, in the upcoming webinars, we are going to do that. We're going to have everybody can see each other and we can really talk back and forth. It'll be fun, but it'll still be kind of like more of a class-like situation, which should be very interesting because it's time to start expanding on what we're doing. So anyway, thank you. All right. So the next point that I wanted to bring in was that to establish this totality more richly into every moment of day-to-day life, the principle is that we get comfortable and familiar with watching or witnessing our own movement of awareness or attention. Because, of course, awareness and attention can just move spontaneously, but then also there's the element of witnessing or watching it, which adds another layer. However, we're going to take the exercise that we did earlier and we're going to bring it on to another level here. So I'm going to encourage everyone once again to close the eyes. And this time, feel awareness, feel your awareness, aware of itself. And some of you may notice that when awareness is aware of itself, it tends to localize and isolate into the head, into the center of the head. The Anya chakra is the center of awareness in the body. Now we know that awareness expands and refines and purifies and activates whatever it touches. So when awareness is aware of itself, this naturally, spontaneously affects the capabilities of our awareness to be even more amazing, more powerful, more incredible. And of course, that flower of life matrix can place right over that Anya chakra. And what I want everyone to notice as this is happening is that, again, it is both localized and non-localized. That awareness can have a seat in the middle of the head, but at the same time is present in equal concentration in all locations in creation. Every corner of creation. Every particle of creation, at the most fundamental levels of creation, that flower of life matrix is already present. So as it expands, you can see that it is already there. So we're not really creating anything new. We're simply giving expression to something that already existed. Beautiful. Okay, let's open our eyes. Again, I feel like when we do those exercises, it's just so, it creates and elicits such a bliss response in the physiology. There's that feeling of, oh, I could just sit here all night. However, speaking of the bliss sensation, creating bliss, that brings me to a couple other points that I wanted to bring in regarding enhancing or supporting the profound values of totality or completeness or profoundness in everyday life. One of these points is that some activities and behaviors require a little bit of setup. That, in other words, if we create a condition, an initial condition, it allows for success to occur more effortlessly. The word more and effortlessly almost don't feel like they go together in the same sentence, but there's a matter of setting up conditions. And then one of them is to have a little bit of focus on enhancing one's own awareness. I don't know about you guys. Well, I do know a little bit how things are doing. I'm actually checking right now. I want to know better about you guys. I'm checking to see how that Anya chakra is doing for everybody. Okay, so one of the things that happened collectively with our group when we did that last exercise was when awareness discovered that it can be both isolated on a point and also non-localized at the same time, that created ripples and ripples of energy running through the matrix of creation. And that brings me to the point that when we do these live webinars, we are creating the experience as we are doing, as the webinar is unfolding. We are literally manifesting this experience as we go along. When people watch the webinars later, like this webinar will go up online in a few months, then that same experience is recreated by any new nervous system that comes to the table, that comes to join this webinar. And again, it's a little bit like that metaphor that I used earlier about how you've got the 3 in 1 and then they become 1. They're 1. So we're going to place them in this position, and then another layer of 3 in 1 comes up, and then all of those get placed in this position. We're going to do more. There's a way to do this. There we go. More 3 in 1s. So you've got the 3 in 1 over here, but then we create more and more layers of wholeness as we go along. So that's what happens, is that the healings continue to be layers and layers of effectiveness and power and refinement take place on all the healing work that we're doing as we're going along. All right. Creating a condition. We talked a little bit in the last webinar about creating holy spaces. But now we can add this flower of life to the holy spaces. And that instantly integrates any individual holy space with the entire rest of creation and sets it up for success. It sets it up for perfect alignment with cosmic evolution. Now, what's happening as I'm speaking this is I'm seeing an unfoldment of the different flavors of all the different holy spaces. When it's time to heal, we set up a holy space for healing. When it's time to create something beautiful, we set up a holy space for creation of beauty. When it's time to cook, we set up the holy space for the cooking process. Using the Flower of Life Matrix, I'm learning as we're going along, guys, because this is all new. You know, we're at the point where it's new information for me. Using the Flower of Life Matrix in all the holy spaces, what it does is makes efficient the process of creating the holy space. So in other words, already the Flower of Life Matrix surrounds your cooking area. It surrounds your artistic area. It surrounds your body for the sake of, in the astral body, in the astral field, for the sake of supporting the action which is of maximum value for you. How about putting one in your bank account? then instead of having to consciously think, oh, I need to create a holy space there, already the foundation for the holy space is there. Barely you get started on the cooking process when all of a sudden, you know, the great long tradition of good cooks, the great field of those who have cooked at the highest level, the highest caliber of efficiency and capability comes and activates the celestial field, and all of a sudden that process becomes one of highest success and also highest fulfillment. So that brings up, as I'm going along, as I said, I'm in new territory right now, and thank you to all of you. Like I said, tonight's group feels like a very intimate, very close. I feel like our hearts are very, very close. So I'm going to ask the question, pose the question to all of you, to our divine being, which is, if that's the case, if we can overlay, if this flower of life matrix basically exists in every particle of creation, which means it's already overlaying everything, right? Like I was saying, well, you can imagine you've got a flower of life matrix in your hand, but the truth is there's already a flower of life matrix in your hand and in our eyes and in our different parts of our brain and everywhere. It's already in the kitchen. It's already in the music room, the meditation room. Then how does that explain or integrate with the subtle differences from one activity to another, or from one holy space to another, from one intention to another? Very good. Okay, so the answer has come back. And the answer that I'm getting is, and any of you, if you're getting more on this, just feel free to jump in. But the answer that I'm getting back is that what makes the difference between mundane experience from day to day, I wake up every day, it's the same thing every day, I go to my job, or I don't have a job, or whatever I do, whatever I'm dealing with, there's a kind of a mundane feeling to it, to having that feeling of that every moment is absolutely exceptional, has to do with our inner experience of excitation, passion, how invested we are in what it is we're doing and the experience that we're having at that moment. So it has to do with investment of awareness, investment of excitement, investment of caring about it. And of course, as we know, half the time that we're in these healing sessions, we're clearing attachments. So, so the investment has to be something that sits outside of the mundane experience of just simply being attached to results coming out in a certain way. The investment itself is a universal function. And even if individual experience is not investment, it's more like I get up every day, I don't look forward to my job, I'm having troubles here or there, things aren't good, I'm worried. Even if that's the experience, I'm finding back to the thread. The investment has to do with stepping outside that experience, just a little bit outside, enough to know that being does find it exciting, that the mother of creation is experiencing the entire creation through your human experience. And your human experience, whatever experience you're having, wouldn't be happening if that wasn't the thing that the wholeness, the totality of creation is really invested in, really wants this experience. Otherwise, why have it? I'm so glad I don't wear eye makeup. Sorry. I can scratch my eye whenever I want. No, the point is that the mother of creation wants to have your life experience. So however you interpret it, however your individual mind, your individual consciousness interprets your own personal life experience, the reality is the totality wants you, needs you, adores you, and cares about every little teeny little particle of what you're experiencing. So this is already the reality. This is like the Flower of Life matrix is already everywhere. Look how beautiful that thing is. It is already. Look how beautiful this thing is. It's everywhere. Like that. This is an expression of that beautiful love. And notice, it's not just a big field of nothing. There is definition here. There's a center, and then there's another center, and then there's a little center over there. There's all kinds of, there's a big center. There are big centers and little centers and centers within centers within centers. And so this is something that cannot be escaped, even if we convince ourselves that we don't care, or that it's just boring, or it's nothing but a bunch of trouble, or whatever. It's still, on some level, the being of all creation is just thrilling at every second. This is just like thrilling. I think that picture's thrilling. Okay, stop share. Back to me again. So we can tell ourselves, oh Lord, help us. Politics in America are making us crazy. Or, oh God, my family situation is so awful. What am I going to do? Or, oh geez, my health is in a terrible state. I'm not sure how I'm going to deal with that. So we can tell ourselves that this is a bad thing, but the fact is that that is present in every part. So what's happening is we want to be able to have that level of passion, excitement, and investment in each moment. And to do that, we need to create a kind of a balance within both of the physical body and the mental, emotional structure of the being. So a little description of what we're doing, what's happening at the physical level of being. There is this area deep in the mind, in the brain, called the limbic system. You've got this right and left hemispheres of the brain, and that's where a lot of processing takes place. But in the center of the brain, there are a whole bunch of cute little organs, and they all have different roles that they play, and they're really interesting. And one of them is called the caudate, and it starts with the letter C, and it looks like a letter C. And at one end of the caudate is an organ called the nucleus accumbens, and that is a pleasure center. And at the other end of the caudate is the amygdala, and that is a pain center. And the nucleus accumbens and the amygdala are really, really close to each other like that. So, and right under the amygdala, the pain center, there's like your memory center. So that's like right down here, the inferior temporal cortex is right under that. The homunculus, no, that's the homunculus. The hippocampus is right down there. So if you get hurt, then that sends a message into the memory center and goes, oh, note to self, let's not do that again. So here's the deal. You've got these two pain and pleasure centers really close to each other. If you have a pleasurable experience, the pleasure center goes off. If you have a painful experience, the pain center goes off. But sometimes you have an experience that's so pleasurable, so intense, that it sets them both off at the same time. Like birth. Birth is, I know not everybody out there is a mom, but birth is really painful, but it's also like indescribably pleasurable also. It's huge. Sometimes, you know, movies that make you cry, or there are other experiences, you can probably think of them, that have a little bit of a mix of both pleasure and pain to them. And the deal is that we want to get to the bliss point, because bliss point is a term from business. I have a son who just graduated with an MBA, so everybody's sharing all their information over here. So he said this bliss point is it's a thing. It's a thing. There's a relationship. There's a ratio. Just like in sacred geometry, there are all these ratios and relationships between different sizes and shapes of different forms, you know. You get the 2-to-1 ratio, you get the 3-to-1 ratio, they get the 5-to-1 ratio. There are all these different ratios that create different beautiful, luscious effects. So there's a ratio that's just right, and it's known as the bliss point. And a lot of research in the field of business has gone into bliss points with regards to different products that people make. For example, I don't know if any of you guys out there know how many times a potato chip needs to crunch in order to be perfect. You can test this. The answer is 4. Research has been done on that human beings like their potato chips to crunch just 4 times, no more, no less, in order to feel like just the perfect potato chip, not too soggy, not too chewy, right? So not too brittle. You don't want to just crunch once and then it's done. So every experience in life has the potential to activate in the mind to the bliss point, so that every experience is a transformation. Every experience, birth changes life forever. And there are a lot of other experiences like that too. We've had those moments in our life where we have those great, powerful, awakening experiences. And there's a little bit, it stretches the inner being to a certain degree and makes it just slightly uncomfortable, but at the same time also is so powerful and so transformational. And so what we're doing is we're cultivating with our awareness. We've got the awareness right in there at that point. There's one on each side because all the organs in the brain except for the pineal gland are doubled. So we've got one on each side. And we're just looking at that little spot, that relationship between the pain and pleasure centers. Everyone is receiving into their God presence the concise ratio. The precise ratio. Oh, what do you know? It's the golden ratio. Of course it is. That makes so much sense. The golden ratio is 1.6189 or something going on to infinity. Anyway, you can look it up. You can Google golden ratio and there's a relationship. There's a relationship. And it favors on the side of the pleasure center. It favors on the side of the pleasure center, the nucleus accumbens. So what that means is awareness gets into that gap between those two organs, and within the gap it sits in a ratio between them that is aligned with the golden ratio, favoring the nucleus accumbens. And as awareness does that, that flower of life matrix, which of course has the golden ratio in it, sits there too and supports the completion of that experience, totality. And what this does is it speaks to the body bliss. It speaks bliss to the body. And this story of bliss, now we get into the part of tonight's webinar where we start looking at how do we expand on totality? How do we expand on the magic in every moment? The answer is that this bliss, which you make within your own being, communicates first to what's happening in the present moment. Whatever is in the body, whichever area of the body needs the support, needs the love, needs the care, needs the healing. I have to be silent. Because the energy is moving so much. And I'm so impressed with how each of you is healing yourself from within. Beautiful. You are so beautiful. You are so perfect. I'm seeing, as this healing is taking place, I'm seeing a huge activation at a very kind of expanded scale of the self. We're looking into subtle structures of your physiologies, which are eternal, which move like that last picture of the flower of life that I just showed you. It's such a fractal. The whole creation is such a fractal, right? That this aspect of yourself, when it moves, the whole being moves. You move in the present, you move in the future and the past. Everything moves at once. Everything, the whole universe moves. So, again, new territory for me, and in my deepest gratitude to all of you for being the awesome beings that you are, that eternal part of yourself moving, teaching. We're teaching ourselves. We are our own inner teachers, our own inner light of wisdom. That being is an integral structure of everyone's finest, most essential self, everyone's essential self. You own this. It is your birthright to have access to the structures of your being, this structure of your being, which is the eternal knower. I feel so humble in the presence of this aspect of my own self. It's interesting. And what I'd like to offer is, I'd like to offer to infinity, to total absolute being in silence. I would like to offer the relationship between the inner wisdom or the inner knower and the activation of the pleasure pain centers in perfect ratio. I'm seeing a flip-flopping of energy patterns as if we're looking at the flower of life matrix going like this, back through time kind of. And what happens is that ratio flips. The ratio, it's been its nature up till now. Okay, so we're seeing something up till now. The reason that sometimes life isn't as comfortable as it could be, or we're dealing with challenges, or we're having health concerns, is because that ratio flips. The ratio itself is what's so beautiful. But as beautiful as it is to give birth, it is equally beautiful to be in the presence of a loved one as they die. But it's also, as much as it's blissful to give birth, it's also painful to watch a loved one leave. So I'm seeing that this thing, it flips. It flips back and forth. So sometimes we're dealing with difficulties, challenges, pains. Sometimes we're dealing with incredible bliss. What's really happening is totality is speaking through your eternal self, which is just another layer of totality. It is not just, it is magnificently another layer of your totality. And my question is to this inner knower, if this flipping has been responsible for challenges and then good times, you know, and there's pain times and then there's happy times like that, is it possible at this time, by witnessing or stepping back a little bit from this process, to create a stable or consistent, if it's the ratio that's important, then it doesn't really matter if it's on the side of the pain center or the side of the pleasure center, then why can't it always consistently be on the side of the pleasure center? Why can't we just have that? Or maybe I'm wording that wrong. Let's word it another way. How can we create the condition whereby That ratio is present in every particle of day-to-day life and existence, and at the same time, it's always favoring on the side of the pleasure center. The answer coming back is, there's fear that I will not learn, and that fear is in some small individualized level of being. Oh, easy peasy. Ancestors. Oh, I'm glad we're getting to the ancestors. Thank you. So in the ancestral archive, the next thing is to, sorry, scratch on the back. In the ancestral archive, that relationship is there in the dynamics of male-female interactions, among other things. It's there at the point of conception. That ratio is there. Oh, this is rich. Okay. So in the ancestral archive, for all the ancestors, going all the way back, at the point of conception, clearing the illusion that I will not learn my life lessons unless I suffer. Clearing the illusion. I'm seeing the flower of life matrix sitting on all those spots, those points of conception. Enhancing, expanding, magnifying, integrating. And as it does so, communicating. This is like a subtle communication, right? Language of perception and experience. It's communicating through form. It's communicating through a shape, through a geometrical shape. It's communicating that bliss is the underlying reality of creation. And even in those experiences that were identified as uncomfortable, and we all know we've had some experiences. I mentioned how I didn't sleep so much some years ago, which probably contributed to me getting sick about 10 years ago. We've all had those experiences that now those experiences are being flipped. All the uncomfortable experiences are being flipped. It's like a little switch. You can flip it one way, you can flip it the other way. With attention, attention does it. So this would be an interesting experiment, right? That if we were in an experience that's unpleasant in some way or another, can I, at that moment that I'm in that experience, can I flip that switch, flip the ratio over so that it's favoring on the side of bliss, and will that actually change that experience? I already know the answer is yes. I've already done this experiment. But you guys get to do the experiment too. Because the idea of these webinars is to empower you, is to fill you up with all the tools and all the resources that you need to make this work in your life in every moment. To focus your attention or your awareness in order to create magic in every moment. The experience I had was earlier in the week. Some of you may have caught the YouTube video that went up on Sunday, which was the healing at the Buchan Pipeline. Well, anyway, we went back and used the Flower of Life Matrix. I was with some friends and also friends who are doing healing work. And we went back and we used the Flower of Life Matrix, and we did another layer of healing now with several people. And within 24 hours, an article came out that 6 senators, led by Bernie Sanders, had made a proposal to the president to halt all work on the Bakken pipeline. Within 24 hours. Of course, we don't know if President Obama is going to do that. We might need to go back and do another healing, but at least the proposal has been made. Yes, we can. I hear your sweethearts. Yes, we can do that now. So we can on the Bakken pipeline. Why not? As we do this, remember that pipeline's like a little capillary running under the surface of the earth. So as we do this, here's what I'm seeing coming up. It's bliss. What we're doing is we're favoring bliss. And the flow of the whole vascular system, the whole circulatory system is the flow of bliss in the body. For some of you, we're interfacing this with the nervous system too, because we want those good nervous system healings to come out of this live webinar. The flow is bliss. And what I'm seeing is the activation of that sacred geometrical form in the heart, in all of our hearts, in our heart chakras. It's already up here, so now it's going to be here and here. So all the chakras can activate, all of them, even the upper ones, even the lower ones. And what we're doing, is this beautiful. So right away, as soon as this happens, everybody's chakras are activating up with this flower of life matrix and humming with very concise, very pure resonations of totality, pure consciousness, pure being. The whole webinar is lighting up like a Christmas tree. But there's definitely a hum. I can hear a hum. There's a humming, like a soft, radiant warmth, which is radiating through our webinar. And there's a flower of life matrix going over the whole webinar. And that is integrating with subtle realms of creation, where your eternal knower is. I've been doing a lot of exploring in new realms, subtle realms of creation too over the last few weeks, and there's a realm that's in here between the celestial and causal level, and then it spans from between the celestial and causal level to between the causal and spirit level of creation, and it is inhabited by the softest, most innocent sweetness of being. We don't give credit for how powerful this level of being actually is. It is, when I found it and I found this level of expression of consciousness, so innocent, so sweet, so darling, just cherishable sweetness. I realized I hadn't experienced that since I was very teeny-weeny, a teeny tiny person, and I'm glad we're bringing this up, because what happens is when people are very, very small, very little people, in the womb and in little infancy state, they have access to all kinds of experiences and perceptions that are really vast in nature, and they are amazingly powerful, amazingly powerful. A little baby does nothing. They lay in the crib, they do nothing. Sometimes they cry, sometimes they eat, sometimes they sleep. That's about it. And yet, little babies are they're so beautiful. They're so beautiful. If a woman walks in a grocery store with a little baby, it's like a magnet. All the women in the grocery store go, "Oh, baby alert, I see one, there's over there." So it's very powerful, but it gets covered very quickly. For all of us in this group, we haven't had access to this level of our being in a really long time. And that inner knower, that inner wisdom, eternal wisdom aspect of self, that this is something that we started out with early, like before human lifetimes, before there was an earth. Before there was an earth may have been the last time that we were really connected into that part of ourselves. So because it came up in tonight's webinar, and it's kind of like this new thing, for me, it'll probably be an overnight, and in tomorrow's webinar, we'll find more that we can expand with that particular aspect of being. However, This aspect of being, which is so tender, which is so innocent and sweet, is intimately connected to your ability to self-heal. And these subtler realms of creation connect us in, like that wonderful picture which I showed you before, which I'm not going to bring it up again because you remember it. Maybe I'll put it in the letter at the end. It connects us to our political system. This is what our political system needs. Oh yes, of course, it needs truth and transparency and honesty. We already knew it needed that. But what it also needs is it needs the purity and the innocence and the compassion and empathy and softness and gentleness. And it's like a kind of a deeply human value. It needs that. You know, if this is activating the heart of our president, who received that request from the senators to stop the work on the Bakken pipeline. So what is it that makes him decide yay or nay? What is it? It is the compassion. It is that sweetness, that innocence. It is that ability to look at our world, our tender, beautiful, exquisite world, and think in terms of compassion, adoration for life. The problem isn't that we need more petroleum moving from one part of the world to another, that we need to be self-sufficient as Americans so we have more and more gas that we're creating for ourselves. The problem is that we need to quit using gas. It's simple. And anyway, the technology for making cars that run on air and water has been around for decades and decades now. All that stuff is already available. It's been available. That's all. It's simple. And it wouldn't take very long. Oh, it's a little tiny shift. Just a little tiny shift over, and we won't be using gas at all. Oh, electric cars. Well, electric cars still use some gas. Anyway, that's the point. That's what we're doing. That's the underlying premise, is to get outside of the little blinders and think in terms of totality. Good. So everyone's hearts, we're going back to the center of our collective tonight. And I was saying there was a kind of a warm humming sound in our collective. What I'm hearing now is the beaming sound of softest breath right out of the center of the Flower of Life matrix, which is in our collective, the collective of our webinar. And I'm listening to it. It's like music, and it's beautiful. And it is the auditory expression of the Flower of Life matrix. Beautiful. Oh, oh. So as this sound is humming and resonating, it is awakening a fullness in us as a collective and in us as individuals that was not here before. And it feels as if, it feels as if a little bit of pressure builds up in order for a release which is really satisfying. Think of a sneeze. When the body has an impurity deep inside it and it wants to let the impurity go, then instead of just breathing out, what happens is first it holds back and it lets the energy of wanting to let go build up until the energy of wanting to let go builds up to such a capacity or such an extent that the release is very dynamic and it's able to dig down, it's able to pull out those deeper impurities from the system. So this is what's happening. And it is my perception that when that happens, it's like the switch over. That the holding back is like the boundaries or the limitations or the imbalances in creation and in life that hold us back from our full potential, that hold us back from enjoying perfect health, etc. And that the imbalance is there in order to promote the building of purity, forms of purity and wisdom and capabilities, to build them up inside till they become very, very strong, till they become powerful enough that they reach a tipping point, which is that golden ratio. And at that point, all the evolutionary value of creation moves forth and transforms creation. It transforms everything. So what we're doing is we're going back to that original exercise, to that original point where we were feeling in the body and feeling where the awareness needs to be in order to heal everything. And as that's happening, as that switch over is happening, the part of your being which is eternally wise is applying it through all time, through every point in the story or the history of your soul where there was suffering, challenges, and turning each point from favoring on the side of the pain center to favoring on the side of the pleasure center. And as that's happening for everybody, and I'm really, a lot of energy is moving right now as that's happening, what I'm seeing is the washing away of illusion. Because every time there was some deep, dark, uncomfortable, unpleasant experience, of course, it communicated to your memory, the memory center of the brain. And particularly if those experiences occurred in very early youth, children tend to think more in terms of absolutes. And so children would, that's the time when a lot of the beliefs that inhibit or limit life later on are established. Because the child has some experience. You know, I mean, it's designed for the child puts their hand on the hot flame and then they remember, oh, I'll never put my hand on a hot flame again, ever, 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 right? But the thing is that there's a time and a place for every kind of limitation and boundary. And in the process of evolution, we are liberating from boundaries. We are liberating from boundaries because we are establishing capabilities of such tremendous potential that we can meet situations and circumstances that we could not meet previous to this webinar. It's like that child. Maybe they put the hand on the stove and they're like, well, I'm never going near a stove again. Well, guess what? Later they become a grown-up and then they need to cook. So they got to go by the stove. You just have to go by the stove. But you go by it with wisdom, with understanding, with capabilities. So you use the stove. You turn that thing around and you use it for something which is absolutely life-supporting. Fear is clearing from the third chakra for a lot of people. Fear is also, I've got some people clearing through fear from the Ajna chakra. And here, oh, fear seems to be clearing from a bunch of different places. Good. First chakra. Second, all the chakras. Now the fear is clearing. It's fear clearing in layers. Fear, evident. Now I'm just finding out, fear is behind all that illusion. All those belief systems which do not serve evolution, which do not serve life, which hold you back from moving forward with maximum speed and effectiveness, have fear underneath them. All of them do. And along with that fear, for a lot of people, there have been pain bodies and attachments. Pain bodies are always attached because they're feeding off of that discomfort. For some people, skeletal system. We have an issue here which kind of harkens a little bit back to the discussion on politics, and that is administration. Administrators, administration, dealing with authority figures. A lot of the situations and circumstances looking back through the history of the soul that have been difficult or challenging have circled around, feeling as if my voice doesn't count, my point doesn't count, I'm not powerful to make my world and my reality happen the way I want it to happen or where I see obviously it should, but I am helpless at the hands of a more powerful individual that's sitting in the bones. Clearing fear from the bones, from the skeletal system, and the fascia, the connective tissue. We've got some people whose fascia is so tight, it's like clamping down a little bit on the nervous system. So we want to clear that tension and fear regarding authority. There's only one authority, and that's being. And that being is running everything. It's running the whole show. The whole dramatic, wild ride that we're on is being run by one intelligence ultimately. And it's true that from the level of individuality, one can sort of force nature to do certain things, at least on a temporary basis. It is possible to manipulate nature from the level of our individualized consciousness, to make it, to force it, to bend it to one's will. However, in the long run, if that's the habit of the way to get things done, ultimately, there will come a time when you really wanted it to bend a certain way and it won't bend for you. Because in the long run, the way to get nature to bend to your will is to become one with cosmic evolution. And then every corner of creation is supporting your will. It's a big lesson. It's a big lesson. There's probably a little switch in there that we need to flip at some point. But what I'm thinking is that I'm seeing that we came to our hour. So unless there are any questions, we should probably get ready to wind down tonight's session. So we're winding down tonight's session with the softest love and the memory of that resonation, that subtle sound resonation that emanates from the center of our webinar group. And for those who come in the months ahead, they also can it'll add layers onto that. But that sound resonation is eternal. Once it's been produced by our group, that softness, that warmth, that sweetness, it never ends, and it radiates out into the rest of creation forever and ever and ever. And it supports and validates and upholds highest levels of goodness for all times. And it integrates you with that basic cosmic evolution so that you spontaneously and naturally just do and think and feel the right things that align your desire with cosmic evolution. We will always be dealing, as long as we're living in human physiologies, we'll always be dealing with certain individuals who are making things happen the way they want them by forcing. And it's not unusual for people in that mindset to work their way up into high administrative positions. That actually kind of goes with the territory to a certain degree. However, just know that there comes a time when everything happens the way it's supposed to happen, when all of it balances out by flipping the switch. So practice, go in and play with this. The more you put your attention on the principles that we worked on tonight, the more proficient, the more profound, the more lovingly you will evolve your ability to use these tools in a way which isn't forcing nature to do what you want, but is more like the difference between when a mother says, "Come here," and then the child runs the other way. Or the mother says, "Come here, I need to love you," and then the child just comes running. So this is the difference. What we're learning in the webinar is the loving invitation the loving invitation to nature to create highest good, highest health, highest well-being for everyone. And when the other one shows up, you switch it. All right, so good luck, everybody, using that switching tool. Good luck. The trick is put the attention in that spot where it switches. And then lovingly offer the desire back to your highest intention to make the switch. Beautiful. Every time you do that, you create a wave of sweetness that radiates out to the whole creation and never stops. You guys are so amazing. That was beautiful. It's a beautiful way, beautiful note to end tonight's webinar. So thank you. These webinars always feel like they're not quite long enough. To me, there's so much, we do so much, and there's so much fullness, so much more. So I look forward to expanding on all of the elements that came forth in tonight's webinar. And I hope everybody really enjoys going back and reviewing the details of the different exercises. I'm so grateful to all of you for being absolutely brilliant and helping and supporting the evolution of expansion of knowledge that came out tonight. Thank you, everyone.